You ever drive past a big construction site and see those giant piles of leftover wood, and you just wonder, where does all that stuff actually go? Well, it might seem simple, it's just wood, right? But its journey is actually incredibly complex. So today, let's follow a piece of scrap wood and dive deep into the world of recycling, right here in Ontario.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with just how much wood we're talking about, the scale of the problem. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the regulations, the rules of the game. After that, we'll look at the businesses that actually move this stuff around, explore the really cool second life wood can have, and then finally, we'll tackle the big question: what's holding us back? First things first, let's wrap our heads around the sheer volume of wood waste. We are not talking about a few leftover 2x4s from a weekend project. This is a massive, constant stream of material pouring out of our industries and construction sites every single day. So a pile of wood just like this one is really our starting point. This is the raw material for a huge, often invisible industry. And the biggest question of all is, does this end up as something valuable, or does it just get buried in a hole in the ground?
And here is the answer. And honestly, it's pretty staggering. For all the waste that comes out of what's called the IC&I sector, that's our industrial, commercial, and institutional sectors, only about 15% of it gets recycled. That crazy low number is the whole reason we're talking about this. So why is it so low? Well, the story really begins with the law. Okay, so where does the journey begin? Before a single piece of that wood can be hauled away, it has to be classified. See, Ontario has some very specific rules that act as a gatekeeper, deciding what's clean wood and what might be, well, something a lot more complicated. And this, right here, is the critical point. It's a legal definition from Ontario's Regulation 347. This is the official dividing line. If it's defined as wood waste, it's on the path to recycling. But if it's been treated with certain chemicals, like old-school pressure-treated wood or railroad ties, it gets shoved into a completely different and way more restrictive system. And this really shows you the difference in black and white. Over on the left, you've got the good stuff: clean lumber, old pallets, tree branches. This is the ideal material for recyclers. But on the right, well, these are the troublemakers. You've got railroad ties soaked in creosote, old utility poles treated with some nasty stuff, and that old greenish deckwood probably treated with something called CCA. So how can you know for sure what you're dealing with? Well, for things like old painted wood, especially from before 1978, you have to test it. They use something called the TCLP test. In the lab, they basically simulate what would happen in a landfill by leaching a sample. If that liquid has more than 5 milligrams of lead per liter, bam, that wood is now officially classified as hazardous waste. It's a simple test, but it has huge consequences. All right, so once the wood is classified, somebody's got to move it. And this is where a whole industry of haulers and logistics companies comes into play. They are the absolute crucial link between where the waste is made and where it's going to end up. So let's use a company like 95wood.com as a quick example. They have different tools for different jobs, right? For a typical construction site, a 20 or 40-yard roll-off bin is perfect. But if you're talking about a huge factory getting rid of tons of wood, you're going to need the big guns, like a massive 144-yard trailer. It's all about matching the gear to the job. Now, this is where it gets really eye-opening. Look at how much the price can change. For the exact same job, 4 tons of wood in a 40-yard bin, the cost is all over the place. Some companies will give you one flat rate that includes everything, while others break out the cost of the bin and the weight separately. It just goes to show you it's a competitive market, for sure. Okay, so the wood's been sorted and hauled off. Now we get to the really exciting part. Where does all the clean wood actually go? This is where we start to see the incredible promise of what's called the bioeconomy, turning stuff we used to think of as garbage into really valuable resources. So there are basically 4 main paths this recovered wood can take. It can be burned to create energy. It can be turned into a super cool product called biochar. It can be ground up for simple things like landscaping mulch or animal bedding. Or if it's really high-quality stuff, it can be reclaimed and upcycled into beautiful new furniture or flooring. And this isn't just happening by accident. This is all part of a very deliberate provincial strategy. Ontario's Forest Biomass Action Plan is actively trying to make this happen because they see waste wood not as a problem, but as a huge economic opportunity just waiting to be tapped. Now check out this specific and frankly game-changing example. Instead of using fossil coal,
Steelmakers are starting to use biocarbon pellets made from wood waste. I mean, just think about that for a second. That pile of scrap wood from the beginning of our story could literally help decarbonize one of the world's most carbon-intensive industries. That is the bioeconomy in action.
This all sounds pretty great, doesn't it? We've got the tech, we've got the strategy, but remember that 15% number from the beginning? Let's get right to the heart of the conflict here. If all these amazing solutions exist, why are we still burying so much of this stuff?
So this is the million-dollar question we have to answer. We have the rules, we have the haulers, we have these innovative new uses for wood. What is standing in the way? What's preventing us from connecting all these dots and getting that recycling rate way, way higher?
Well, it probably won't surprise you to learn that a huge part of the problem is money, plain and simple. As you can see here, it's often way, way cheaper to just dump wood in the landfill. Sorting it and recycling it can cost 2, 3, even 5 times more per ton than just burying it. And as long as that price gap exists, the landfill is always going to be a tempting option. And the other major hurdle is contamination. Picture this. You have a perfect truckload of clean, recyclable wood, but then someone throws in some plastic wrap, a few pieces of drywall, or even just one single piece of that old treated decking. That's it. That's all it takes. The entire load can be rejected by the recycler, or at the very least get hit with huge fees. Keeping the waste stream pure is a massive challenge. And so that leaves us with the ultimate question. The journey of scrap wood in Ontario is really a story of incredible potential fighting against some very tough economic and logistical realities. Can new policies, can new innovations finally tip the scales and make recycling the default option, the easy option, and the cheapest option? That's the challenge that lies ahead.